Okay, I think that will have done it. Let's do one more air check or one more sound check here. All right, I think that's good. Apologies for the little bit of a late start there, but oh, this is not supposed to be on. Pardon me. There we go. That'll make life a little bit better. Should I spin my chair around? Something about this is a little brighter than usual too. Maybe this one got bumped while I was doing some video work. Let's see. A little better that way. A little better that way. All right, there we go. I spent too much time with the other part. It's a little bit warm in here, and some of the fans got moved around. One of the things that I have been working on recently is that area that's back over my shoulder, right there. Still has a bunch of work still to do with the see the curtain covering the closet now. But one of the things I did was, if I can aim the remote correctly, is a little bit of that type action. There's now lights ringing around that, and I have the standing desk there. So as you can see, you have the piano over there needs to move so that the desk can move to the right and forward. Then the camera can be somewhere in this area, shooting me in that direction. And hopefully, videos will have a little bit of a higher quality. Still a bunch of work to do there. Also, I have to figure out where my lighting is going to attach because the normal attachment points for me are up here on shelves that are above me here and on the monitor over there. But there's guitars on that wall, so that's going to be tricky. Hello, Ashwin. Welcome to the stream. Just explaining that the video section back there, and as a result of all the work I was doing to set that up, a bunch of things got jiggled around in the office, and as a result, I jumped into the stream, tested everything out, and realized I was going to die, and all the fan placement was all wonky and playing into the mic. But I think I have it all sorted out now. I guess the last thing to do is remove this bracelet because otherwise it makes an annoying scratchy sound on the desk. And we are good to go with some amount of live stream action. And I didn't really have too much planned for something like this. I've been actually thinking about videos for the other channel, and the notion, such as it is, because so many people keep asking for information on what's new in Sublime Text 4 and on, and we always say go check the change log, and people want to know what the hot takes are. That one of the videos I do want to create, or at least a series of videos, but one for sure is talking about what is new, and I need to record stuff for that. But I don't want to put it out publicly until there's a public announcement. But there's no reason I couldn't record some clips that explain some of those bits and have them in an unlisted video on the channel. And then when we get closer to an actual release, I could polish them up. Something I have been pondering, and as a result, I wasn't paying enough attention to how it was, in fact, Tuesday today and stream time. But I have been actually getting some actual use out of Sublinet, the package we've been working on in the last couple of streams, or this is the last one. I can't remember. I think it was something I was working on during the previous stream day to last week's stream when I wasn't really willing to get on stream because I had a root canal that same day, and that did not go as well as the one that they did on this side like a week or two prior. But I have been getting some actual use out of it. There's just a few more things in here to actually do. I'm not sure how many of these we might actually get to because one of them is syntax related, and syntax highlighting is spooky. But at least what we could do is work out making what goes to the panel, make it less ugly, for lack of a better term. So there's that. And I think that might take us through all the way to the end, and we'll see what's happening, because even with the fans blowing in here, it's kind of warm, which is weird because the air quality here has been absolutely abysmal for the last little while. There was a wind change in the smoke swung down, and the sky was incredibly overcast, and it was very cold for a few days, but it seems to have recovered nicely, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I mean, it's good for the environment. For those of us that like it a little bit cooler, that sit in a room in the nexus of a bunch of computers, a little bit more coldness would be nice. In any case, that is enough rambling. I think everything seems to be going good, and clock's burning. So I'm going to press this button down here, and we'll see what happens. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here. Welcome to live stream for September, someday after the 12th, because that's my birthday. I'm going to say September 15th. It's probably what today's date is. And as usual, we're going to be doing some Sublime Text package development here. And I think what we're probably going to work on is the Sublime package. I got a few things down here in the to-do list. This one at the top is the scary one, so we maybe leave that one, or maybe not. That might be something interesting to fiddle with, actually. So we see what we can do with that one. Definitely one thing I want to change is these two things are right here. This is actually something that an idea that I took from the SFTP package. It has a setting. That's packaged by Will Bond, by the way. It's a pretty great package if you ever find yourself wanting to edit a file remotely and you have FTP or SFTP access. Ridiculously handy. I use that more than I use remote subl, which I do use from time to time. That's handy to trigger in the other way. Anyway, I digress. But that package has the ability to pop up a panel when there's information to show you, and then it auto closes after a little while if you want. So I thought it would be nice to do something similar to that as well, because right now that is 100% hard coded. And the other thing there is this one: implement the proper token ring in the introduction message. As I mentioned at the end of last week's stream, I think the introduction message that gets exchanged between machines, both as part of the broadcast out to advertise that we're here, as well as for incoming messages, have a username and password field inside of them, which are currently populated with hard-coded data just for testing purposes, because I took those a little bit of that code from a prior project. But the idea that I had, why I left that in there, is that you could provide, instead of a username, I'm calling it a token. It could be your username. It could be something different. But the idea is, if you could put that in a setting, that would go out in the introduction messages and to advertise yourself to other people, and those other systems could use that information to decide if they want to be able to connect to you or not. Um, so if you had, for example, if my coworker and I were both working in Sublime, he doesn't use Sublime, he's a Vim guy, and I am too, but I prefer Sublime for most things. But if we both were here and we both wanted to use something like this with our multiple systems, then we could make sure that there's not any crosstalk between them by having our own token, and then certain things would connect. And then if we're going to do that, maybe some sort of token password system that someone just has to throw a password in there to be able to connect, so that someone can't just pop in with, say, the default token and be good to go. I don't know how far down the line we really want to chase that, unless we decide we want to release this, but we do have the facility in there, and it's easier to use the field than to try to take it out, because that requires recalculating offsets of things. So we got that going on. And one other thing that's actually not in this README here is something that Ashwin mentioned in the last stream, which is, what if it transmitted the entire clipboard history to another host when it connected, which I thought was a pretty neat idea as well, because if I was working in Sublime and then I thought, oh, I should totally go do something on my Linux box, I fire up Sublime and boop, it's got that whole history good to go. So that's easy enough to do with just using the messages we already have for shipping off clipboard information, because we already have a queue mechanism in place to be able to shunt messages out, and we can dump a bunch of them in there and let them go. But maybe we have another message that's like that, a clipboard history message that has a Boolean, or it doesn't even have to be. It could be a duplicate of that message that just has a different name. The idea being that perhaps on one system you want to disable the ability of another system to transmit its history. Uh, One of the things that I tend to do if you've watched my streams long enough is if there's something that's relatively easy to add that makes things more configurable and better for the user, why not add that in? Because people do like to use different things in different ways. Take, for example, the conversation that was happening in the Discord right before we went live, where somebody wants ostensibly to do what Terminus and other packages are already doing, be able to change the foreground color, but it's unclear whether they didn't want to use that functionality and wanted the core to do it, or if they just don't know that that exists. But different people want to do different things. If it's possible, why not make it possible? So, which one of these should we toggle first? How about this one? Configure whether the output panel opens automatically or not when an output is logged to it. Currently, it always opens, and that would go hand in hand with this. And let's see, if I was to grab a browser window, I should switch my Chrome to dark mode, huh? That other monitor is much bigger than this one. There we go. All right, so what was I just thinking about there? Package control.io, and we look up the SFTP package because I can never remember the actual page. Homepage. Okay, well, maybe that might be a better idea. One of the items in here is settings. And we're doing this in the web page and not looking in my actual settings because one of the files has my license key in it, and better safe than sorry. So controls where the output panel is hidden. True only shows the output panel on error. False always shows it and never hides it. Number shows it and hides it after a certain number of seconds. I think this is kind of the idea that we wanted to have here. So you could set it to only on error, always show it, and never hide it whenever it's displayed, or some number that makes it pop and go away in seconds. Defaults to 1. Right now, what the code is actually doing is basically this if this setting was defaulting to a value of 2. So with that in mind, let's move that over there. We would need a setting for this one. So these are all the network settings. And oh, and by the way, this code should be pushed up to the GitHub repository. I did some tweaking of the comments in here, so it'll look different from what it looked like previously. And we're in a new Sublime Text build where they fixed the glow, so we're back into the glow, and things automatically or already look a lot better. Okay. Okay. What if we called it auto show panel and set its default to 2 and then said should the output panel be automatically displayed? Valid settings for this are always show the panel on output. False. Only show the panel on error, and number. And again, this is probably one of those things that we might tweak between now and when the code actually gets up. But I like to, this is one of those things, sort of treating it somewhat like a comment in code. If I write down in here what I'm intending to do, it helps clarify in my mind that I'm intending what I mean to be intending. So we can always show the panel, only show the panel if an error occurs, which would be, I guess, a disconnect of some sort. And number is always show the panel, but hide it after this many seconds. Yeah. And if we had that, then we probably need to go into the utils where the settings file is. Oh, and it's up here. Pardon me. So we want a little bit of that. Uh, we're back in glow mode. It's exciting, isn't it? I really missed it. I tried so hard to keep using this even though it was broken because for some things it did not, it looked wrong but still legible. But for some things, the way the glow was offset and muddling it up, it made it really too hard to read. So that it was some rough action there. I got myself habituated to this, which is funny because I think I've mentioned I just threw that rule in there because I wanted to test that out, and I was all like, glowing. Who wants things to glow? Turns out, me. I do. I still haven't taken the plunge into doing it in things that aren't Python, though. But realistically, maybe I should because at home and in a hobby for hobby purposes, I pretty much just use Python for working with Sublime and packages, but at work, I'm doing web stuff with TypeScript. Maybe if parts of that were glowing, it would be more interesting to me. Um, all right, so if we have a setting for this, what now? I guess anywhere we might be displaying stuff, we would want to know about that so that we know how to do it, right? Actually, oh, this might get a little bit more complicated. Um, The log function, for logs where the panel is true, they should only automatically open the panel if a configuration item says so. There should be an additional config item that indicates if the panel should auto close or not. Issues with this involve, in order to pop this only if we want to, which is essentially this, we would need to know if what was being logged is an error. Or if we could always log it to the panel and then have another method to call that essentially does this, right? How would we structure such a code? Anything that called log with, can I scroll that up a little? Anything that called this with panel set to true, that just means it's sending output to the panel. Because we want it to sometimes always be displayed, sometimes only be displayed on error, and sometimes always be displayed but auto close itself after some delay, which is currently 5 seconds hard coded here. Pardon me, I thought that was 2. I guess we either need to make this log function have an additional auto display panel or an additional panel is error or something. I don't want to overload the error parameter that's already here because that one causes it to display an error dialog and go away. And we definitely want the ability to do something like that to draw the user's attention. I don't want to get into if error and not panel do this, otherwise assume error means something else. I guess that would work, but it seems kind of messy. Am I doing this one per? I am, huh? So what would something like this look like if we were doing it? It would be display panel. Would need a window, I guess. Well, this is already pulling it from the active window, right? So yeah, we don't even care about that. Is error equals false, let's say. And then we would say display the output panel based on the input parameters and the value of the auto show panel setting. So these would come down here just for now. we do that, we're going to need to look at from utils. We need that thing that I just did, which is this. That draws my eye every time. Over here on this system, where's my mouse? Over here on this system, there's a copy of Sublime running on the laptop right there. And every time I copy something, it pops over here, which is also something I want to tweak, but I don't think it was in the README. Let's open that up. This auto close thing also needs to be a little bit smarter than it currently is. Whoops. All right, maybe we'll just do it this way because that trackpad is awful. I'm going to make this real big. The console is filled up with lines that say dart.todragonland.org updated the clipboard 15 characters, 80 characters, 13 characters, and so on. Boop, boop, boop. Hello, PH. Welcome to the stream. We are curious to say that's not going to do anything. So what does this actually have to do here? We definitely don't want to do that, and we probably want to fix that too, right? One of the things that should happen here, regardless of anything else, is we need to know which panel is actually open. Oh, sorry, I guess I gotta go to the API help for that one. Returns the name of the currently open panel. That is the action that we want for this. Active panel is equal to that. Well, I guess we do that, right? And throw in a little bit of that action. If active panel is not equal to put dot sublinet, then do this. The idea there is that if the current panel is already the output panel, then this doesn't have to do anything, and it would just leave. Actually, maybe we do that a different way. We could say this. It's equal to, then return. Then we don't even have to do that, right? So I guess we could even refactor that even further, because if that's the only thing that's going to use it, then we can just do it this way instead. Oh, and that no longer needs to have that. So get the active window. If the active panel in this window is already the output panel, you don't need to display it. It's already open. And in that case, it's also not going to try to automatically close it after some number of seconds. Yes, I'm aware Google changes their certificates every 15 seconds. I feel so secure. Okay, so what we need to do, I guess, let's do over here and say search for panel equals true. Because the only place that this is getting invoked is inside of the net handler. What the hell is this doing in here? That was probably not strictly necessary. So this would also be display panel here, and the other one is there, because both of those are in. That really still seems kind of rough, like maybe it should be a little bit smarter about that. Let's verify that, and will the panel pop? Did I already miss it? Let's see. Copy. Well, that may be mildly oh, you know what it is? It is It is more than mildly broken. I forgot. Our usage of enumerations and uh, the use of automatic package reloader are a little bit conflicty with each other. Right. Okay. So that would make sense. I guess all things being equal, I probably shouldn't call it if I'm not going to import it, right? That's from here. I guess for this one, we probably want this. If we save this, the whole plugin will reload, in theory. Well, that one's certainly doing something. Copy. Well, there's a small possibility that this code is actually broken now. So maybe we do a little something like that. And restart this. Oh, we're gonna be all happy about it now, are we? All right. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna open the console in a window. Sort of leave that sitting there like that. Oh, no, maybe I won't because that won't fit on this monitor with my new fancy thing here. If we were to open this particular panel and then swap over to this one and copy some text. All right, that looks like it is working. Yep, that is, panel's already open. Cool. PH says, are you intending that default modules list to persist every call? Which default modules list is that? This one up here in the reload thing? There's an interloper in my hallway and the dog wants to make sure that I know about it. Okay, so that is working. Ironically, I spent a bunch of time doing this, and I probably didn't need to. This particular list of modules up here in the reload thing, yes, it's actually something that gets called from other places and here as well. So, for example, this call is to reload source, which makes sure that it loads the source file. And then if we look in the init in that one, it's got another subcall for that. So I have to remember to add something in here, but that makes sure that it always reloads all of the modules. No, that's just the default so that it works if you don't actually call it with anything. That one I intend to always be the same, yes. Or rather, once it's called with one of the other ones, it will always be a correct thing. But I'm aware one of the neat things about using arrays and default arguments is they're only ever initialized once when the thing is compiled and not every time a call is made. For the purposes of this thing, every time this plugin loads, it effectively recreates a new version of that, and the only thing that calls it without an argument is this one right here. So in the end, it all tends to work out the way that one might expect. Okay, next, if we remembered what our setting was, tricky. Mm. A neat feature indeed, yeah. One of those things that's great 99% of the time, and then that 1% of the time you forget and get kicked right in the butt. But yeah, we need, well, let's just do this first. Auto show panel, pull that out, and this is going to have a value of what? It's going to be true for always, false for only on error, number for always. So if that's the case, then we want to follow through here only if this value is true or a number, right? And numbers are truthy. So that call is going to make sure we always get a value here. I guess not all numbers are truthy. 0 is not truthy, is it? 0 is falsy. What would you expect to happen if you set auto show panel to always show the panel but hide it after 0 seconds? Would you expect it to open and immediately close, or would you expect it to open and close so fast that you never actually get a chance to see it actually doing anything? Because that's sort of what would happen there, right? No. So show panel is equal to that, as we say here. True for always, false for only on error. So if we said, if not show panel and not is error return. Does that do what we want? If we expect this value to be either true, false, or a number, then if it was true, not true is false, so that'll never happen. If it was false, then not false is true, it continues on. And if it's a number that's non-zero, that's true, so it's false, so it doesn't go in. So that seems like it would do a thing. And if that first part ends up being false, then we only want this to happen if is error is true. And we can always do that. And then if all right. I've been doing so much JavaScript lately, I don't trust myself. If is instance show panel int, oops, want a little bit of that, and show panel. In the world of the purely theoretical, let's see, we don't want that. We want you. Okay. Testing. My coffee's in the way. Let's see. From sublinet dot. Oh gosh. No, it's not source. It's utils. Import. Oh, already forget. Display panel. No, huh? All right. Oops. Display panel. Well, that really seems like maybe should have shown a panel. Print leaving active panel is already the output panel. Boo. And I think I don't need to do anything. Whoops. Do not. It's very important that your debug logs have the appropriate thing, and then that would actually show the panel. So if I did this, is error is false. What did I set that default to? Some number, right? Is it just me, or should it, that must mean it's down here, huh? Showing the panel and hiding after and show panel. Back to here, save that. Always remember to re-import the symbol when you do that, or you'll be unhappy. I'm kind of confused about that one. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, okay. Whoops. Maybe a little bit of that'll make it a little bit nicer, huh? There we go. Do I hate that? Yes, I do. Okay, so if I said this, it should be hiding the, showing the, it says it's showing the panel and hiding after 2 seconds. But for some reason it doesn't show the panel, which is odd. But it thought it was doing the right thing. If I set this to true, then it's doing that. Okay. I probably shouldn't have closed that file, huh? Let's close that. And for now, that. I'm going to need that one in a minute. Be unhappy. Open the settings. So if we set this to only show the panel on error, for example, thus, then if we did this, I don't think I need to do anything. And it thinks it doesn't need to do anything because of that bit right there. It's false and it's not an error, but if we passed in true, then we get it saying showing the panel hiding after 0. I think that tracks with what SFTP does. Theory being, if you only want the panel to display on error, then you never want it to auto close. You probably want something like this, and show panel. Weird. That is very disconcerting. If you want the panel to only open on error, you want it to stay there until you see it, but we probably don't want it to automatically pop that up when the value of that is 0. Actually, how is that even working if the value is false? Shouldn't that not have done anything at all? Let's double check that. This one thinks it doesn't need to do anything. And if we said true, that this is an error, well, the panel actually displayed, so that's nice. Kind of concerned about how there's nothing in it. Should probably make sure that that all works. Yeah. It says it's showing the panel, but it doesn't necessarily say that it's going to hide it, right? Which is what we want. If we set this to true, what happens in that case? When we call it with no arguments, it's hiding after 1 second. Am I doing that backwards? That one, I'm not gonna lie, that one catches me by surprise. Um, is this something to do with how ints have a bool method so that they can be considered truthy values? So checking it that way turns out to be actually a thing, because that's an issue. We don't need this part. Well, I think that's a good idea anyway. I'm going to type something over here. Python is instance of Boolean. Comparing Boolean and int using is instance. Can someone give me an explanation why is instance returns true in the following case? I expected false. Hey, I expected false too. Bool is a subclass of int. All right, so that's one of those things that you inherently sort of figure as a C programmer for, you know, an ungodly number of decades. The correct way to solve this depends on what you want to be. If you want true to stop being an int, too bad, that's not going to happen. You need special handling for that. All right. I like the verbiage there. Do you want booleans to be an int? Too bad. Not be an int? Too bad. Not going to happen. True always shows the panel and never closes it. False only shows it on an error, but would thus also never close it, right? So what we really need is we only want to call close after delay if it's a number. And if we want to do that, oh, using JavaScript is going to be the death of me. If it's not a Boolean and it is an integer, and that integer is non-zero, do a thing. There's got to be a better way to pull that off, but oh, that's not the right file. Pardon me. Pull the new one in. Aye. So not with an error, with the actual value set to true. It says it's showing the panel because it just always shows the panel. It never needs to try to not close it. Set it to false. Then it doesn't think it needs to do anything unless you tell it it's an error. And then it says it's showing the panel, but it doesn't go into that particular value. If this was 2, I suspect I have a bug in that code, and I just realized why that panel just disappears for no reason. So if I did this, the panel looks like it's not opening, and yeah, that's because that's not seconds, that's milliseconds. So yeah, 2 milliseconds, there's not really enough time to actually see that happening. But lastly, if this value was 0, then it doesn't think it needs to do anything in that case. That's weird. Oh, because not show panel. Well, first of all, let's fix this. That'll make that problem go away. So if we actually did this, we actually get to see the thing for the 1-2 seconds, theoretically. Unless I broke that code. Maybe we need to fix that too. 1, 2. Did it say it was hiding after? No, it didn't. Right, because I tweaked that thing. I want this to be 2 seconds. Oh, right. Reload the plugin. Then re-import the symbol. Then do that. That value is set to 2, 1, 2. Panel goes away. Cool. So I guess this kind of makes, I'm going to say that that is cool. If you actually set that to be always show the panel but hide it after 0 seconds, the ultimate effect is it never tries to open the panel, which is good because as we just saw, if it tries to, even 2 milliseconds isn't enough. So in that case, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And we came back over to, whoops, this one over here. Save that to reload it. And now we can go back into NetHandler. Both of those calls to display panel. In theory, I have that set to 2 seconds. So if I did this, I think we need to quit and restart this. That moment when you count up to 10 when the delay is 2 and the panel just stays there. Yeah, fun times, huh? 1. If you count slow enough, eventually something will happen. Okay, let's try this. Okay. That whole enumeration thing as a class is kind of an unfortunate turn of events. So I'm going to have to do something about that. It gets worse if you use automatic package reloader, but I think that needs to be the very first thing that loads in order to fix this problem. Kinda. Connection state. So let's say that the default for this temporarily was to only show the panel if an error occurs. So I'm going to swap that to that. Now, if we were to open up this panel, and there should probably be a key binding for that or something. If I copy stuff over here from this system, we can see it populating into there. And a second ago, we just saw that panel pop up. And I set this to the setting on this one to only display it on an error. That's not an error. We're not passing true to this argument. So in theory, I copy this. We don't see anything there. If I looked in the console, we don't see anything in there. But if we look in here, we see another one in there. So now there's 3, hit the copy, and now there's 4. So that bit is actually working. Is APR now capable of running on 2 plugin hosts? I believe so. It does some sort of bootstrapping. Notice there's an automatic package reloader, and then it creates an automatic package reloader 33. I think it takes part of its own code out and drops it into a package that doesn't have the appropriate Python version so that it'll trigger from both of them now. I don't know that there's a cleverer way for that to work, short of ditching one of the plugin hosts completely, but this is that thing that I was talking about earlier. I have a lot of cruft in my folder here that I should probably be cleaning up. I don't know that I necessarily, need various of these packages that we were working on throughout November and other things sitting in here per se. The one I use for creating the overlay, like my camera is in right now. There's just there's this one sample plugin in here too. I have Purple Haze installed for reasons I don't fully understand. Yeah, it's sample help. I really need to clean this business up a little bit. Oh yeah, that reminds me I could totally be using Subnotify to pop some of this stuff up too. if it's actually installed. That would be a neat thing to pull off. What classifies as an error? Let's see. Are commands now namespaced to the plugin host? Will the Python 3.8 command work in a 3.3 host? That's a good question. I think a command is just a command, and one could invoke the other. But I guess that's easy enough to test. If I save this as something and call this PyTest, that goes into my user package. My user package is in the 3.8 plugin host by default. So if I did view.run command PyTest, it definitely does something. But if we swapped this to the other plugin host and did the same thing, command still runs. There may or may not be some freaky edge case if both plugin hosts define the same command, but that's not really something that's very cleanly delineated in just a single plugin host either. Generally, I think the way that it loads plugins and then introspects all of the symbols in the plugin to see which classes are commands so that it can pull them out, it adds them to a list and then creates the commands in the list and registers them in the order they were registered, means that whichever plugin loaded last is the one that wins and overrides the command. For example, user, view package file, user url.py. There's an open URL command that's built into Sublime, and at some point in the past, no matter what, it fired up SeaMonkey or Firefox, or I think it was SeaMonkey, that it always fired up whenever anything would be open. So, for example, I have extra stuff in here, but like somewhere in this one, if you actually look, one of these things will take you, to, so I guess probably this documentation link here would be the best thing. I added a bunch of other documentation in here as well. Would always open in the wrong browser, and I couldn't figure out why. And eventually, I just if I put this plugin in my user package that defines the same command that's also defined in the core, the last thing that happens is the user package is loaded. This command appears in the table, and it replaces the other one, and then it uses the appropriate thing. I'm not even sure that this is actually even needed because that was probably 4 years ago. If you check on the forum for the number of forum topics where I've asked a question, there's only like 4, and one of them is this. And the rest of my posts are all in response to other people and stuff. Maybe 5. I remember this. I remember mentioning override audit when it launched. And I have one other thing about at one point, the unofficial documentation mentioned that using variables in commands like trying to run exec from a key binding and using $file would work, and it actually didn't. And I needed a plugin for that. Let's go ahead and nip that one in the bud, such as it is. Oh, I missed a thing. Close that. So the only places that this are actually happening are here. Displaying a clipboard, the clipboard text is never an error. So we wouldn't call it there. But we do need some more work for that one. And for here, connection state is going to be all of those particular states. The only one of these that, I guess is a connection being closed an error. I don't think it is. Connecting as a state, this one here, this means that we have decided to initiate an outgoing connection to someone else. So that happens, and because all of our sockets are non-blocking, because that's the only sane way to work with network I/O is to use a non-blocking socket. As soon as you call connect on a socket, it starts the connection process, comes back to you, and then the socket will select as writable or readable, one of the two. We'd have to look in the network code to be able to determine whether or not the connection actually worked or not. Accepting is the same sort of thing. If you have a listen socket, your the accepting if you have a listen socket that's non-blocking, then it will select as readable or writable. I can never remember which one of those two things are. I can keep up a mental case for both of them to tell you that something's happening. So that says we're accepting a thing, whether a connection was actually established, closed, i.e. the other side just went away. That might be an error, might not be, and a connection failed. We tried to talk to something and it didn't work. Ashwin says, I've asked plenty of questions, but I guess I've helped plenty as well to redeem myself partially. I don't know that any redemption is technically needed for something like that. I've always been the sort of person that learns best by doing. So even if I asked a question and someone had an answer for me, I'd still want to play with it a bunch to be able to see if I could to basically get a sense for it in my head. I don't know necessarily know why that always worked best for me. I mean, I still like to watch tutorial things and read textbooks and stuff like that to get an idea in my head for what's possible, but I don't fully grasp it and all the interactions until I've played with it. I guess because you get that experience with it. So by and large, if you see me ask a question, one of two things. I've either spent a bunch of time playing with the thing or looking to see if I can solve a problem, and nothing has come to mind, or I'm in the middle of a 15-mile walk thinking in my head of something I want to do later when I get home and I have an idea and I'm not entirely sure if it'll work. And being in the middle of traffic with a cell phone isn't necessarily the greatest time to go into a deep Google session, especially on a phone. So sometimes you might see me ask a question in the Discord. That's usually why that happens. But asking questions is absolutely a great thing, and certainly you have helped a bunch of people in the forum, so it's good to see, I gotta say. So congratulations to you. I don't think I guess we want to know if a connection is closed, so maybe it pops up for that because we kind of intend that the connection to just be established forever. Connection failed is definitely something you want to know about. I'm not entirely sure how to contrive that one personally. Um, uh, I have to print the event here because I can't quite remember. I think it would be the actual value of that thing, right? I think it would be. Oops. Reload that. All right. Well, what if I just restarted that, shall I? I got to get on that. Oh, great. I have some sort of random plugin that's printing stuff in the top level. I have a vague recollection that sometime this week someone asked a question and I did this to see to help them with something. Okay. Network event dot, let's say closed network event dot connection failed. Does that seem like something that would probably work? I think for the purposes of this, only show the panel if an error occurs. Okay, so I'm going to quit this. I'm going to restart it like so. I believe it has established a connection because this one over here just popped up a thing. Incidentally, there's an issue for output panels not scrolling to the bottom, and I cannot wait for that to be fixed because this is most definitely broken. Even though I'm calling append and telling it to move to the end, and I'm calling a move command to jump to the end of the buffer, it still does not scroll to the end, and I don't know why, and it is annoying as all get out. Boom. So there's something in the panel, but it didn't actually pop for us. And if I copy some text, if we check again, it copied it, but it did not pop. I might have to do something drastic and quit this copy of Sublime, which might make me unhappy. That one was an error, so that one automatically popped up, and it's going to stay there until we tell it to go away, because I think that's what we want. I think if we want it to display on an error, that's what you want to have happen. And now I'm going to restart this, and oh, joy of joys, it actually started on the right thing. And this one has just connected to it. I can see over there it says it's accepting an input. Gonna put the mouse input back to the correct one, check her out. And we can see connecting to van term and connected. So I think that kind of is doing the thing that we want. And this is the only two places that this is currently being called. I don't think this is necessarily what we want here. Tricky question. If the theory is that you are working on multiple computers in the same subnet, theoretically at the same time, you're probably only focused on one. So maybe it makes sense to log when another host updates the clipboard so that you can tell it happened. And if you had your thing set to like 2 or whatever to actually see it pop up, you could have it set to true and always see it, and it would open and just stay open forever, which is probably not what anybody would set it to, but it's easy enough to do, so let's do it. Set it to false, you only see an error, in which case this doesn't happen. Or you set it to some number like 2, it opens for 2 seconds and then goes away. If that happens and you're the one that's focused on a different editor, that probably not that big a deal, except for how it keeps happening over here and I'm catching it out of the corner of my eye. Easy enough to add a setting for that. So we might actually even go ahead and say, for the purposes of this one, we might even say is error equals false, just to very clearly point out exactly what it means when it's calling it in this particular case. And for this, we could say is error, and we could say is error is that. Which would more or less do what we want. Now, this needs more working. I know one of the things in the README is that logging is spoopy, and that has everything to do with the crudeness of this log being the name of the event title cased, as opposed to saying connected, disconnected, and whatnot. But that requires us to come up with a clever idea for how we want this to work. Probably connection.hostname should actually be the first part of the dotted IP. It probably doesn't need to be the fully qualified host name. I know all of my machines are in IRC. Or on the dragonland.net. I don't necessarily need to have that crufting up my log. But I think what we probably want is 2, like so. So if I copy this, we see it popping that up, and then I can say pref. I did not have a thing for that. That one. I probably don't need that particular thing there. That's my customized setting for this is just a test that we can broadcast our own discovery packet on a to say that we're listening on a different port than anybody else is, and it still works. Let's set this to false. Cool. I think that's because it's what the default was when package control or when package dev actually loaded that thing. It's a fun fact. If you use package dev and like me, you have Sublime Text 4 as your primary, but you also have Sublime Text 3 that you fire up from time to time if somebody asks a question and you want to verify or look to see something for people in the forum that might not be using the new build. And you're sharing the configuration directory between the two, be very careful because as of not too long ago, there's a new version of package dev that is specifically for Sublime Text version 4, I think, or some sort of targeted version release. Anyway, I ended myself up in a situation where I started Sublime Text 3 and it decided to upgrade the build of package dev to something else. And then when I went back to Sublime Text 4, it told me that package dev was a package that wasn't supported by my current version. Probably that means that they tagged a version to, they've tagged the one of the versions to only require previous versions of Sublime because I think he wants to jump into new builds going forward. As a result, package dev ends up uninstalling itself sometimes, and you need to fix it. It took me a little bit to figure out what the hell was going on there. So let's see. We look at this. So log to the output panel. Okay, nothing like that. Configure the output panel opens automatically or not when output is logged to it. Yes, and that is part of this one. So those two could go away, and then we could open the repository for this. Of course, you're going to open on the wrong desktop, because why wouldn't you? Tell you, I'm running 1080p on this monitor that I stream on, just because it makes for a better output. Everything else is running at a different resolution. Boy, windows on that monitor over there look ridiculously huge. Okay, so that's those two things. New setting. New display panel setting. Probably should have called that something else. Maybe we fix that in just a second. That's the new logging. Is there a new version of this? There is, isn't there? 2033. Checking the Discord here. No, there's not. All right, well, that's unfortunate. Hopefully one is forthcoming because builds prior to the fix that Ben just released in the latest build still have broken glow. We want to stage that one as well, and yeah, stage that thing. So say new setting to control panel auto display. It's good enough for that. And now that we've done all of that, I'm kind of unhappy with the name that we chose. So we might go ahead and do a little bit of that. We'll do that one, and this is all in this one file, right? So there, all of those, and the actual implementation of the thing as well. I'm going to quit that and restart it to make sure that it all comes out, and should be okay. Uh-oh. How did nothing appear in there? That can't be right. Oh no, I broke it. Oh, here it is. Weird. Maybe there was a little bit of a delay. I'm kind of slightly confuzzled by the idea that each instance of this broadcasts every 30 seconds a thing that says, "Hey, I'm here if you want to know about me." Other instances use that as an impetus to connect over if they're not already connected. And one of those discovery messages happens immediately when the plugin loads. But even so, when you start a new copy running, even though it broadcasts out right away and everything should be getting it right away, it sometimes takes a few seconds for it to connect. And I'm not sure why, because logging in the network thread clearly shows that it's looping and correctly selecting on things. But nevertheless, let's just very quickly do a little bit of this business. Like so, and amend that one. Okay. Close that. That's all good. So what was the other thing that we maybe wanted to fiddle in here? Hmm. Detect changes in configuration. That requires setting up a settings change listener and knowing what the last settings were so that you can verify if any of them are different now. And any that are different, there would be only a small number of them, would require us to basically tell the network thread to stop and then recreate it. I'm going to leave that one for the time being. Technically not insurmountable, but there are weird edge cases with the idea of telling the network thread to quit and then actually verifying that it did, that I'm not interested in doing anything with right now. One thing we could do, let's go ahead and do this. We open this up. How are we doing here? If we went into our messages, let's close all these just for the time being. We did a little bit of this and then said that this is identical to clipboard message, but is a different type so that the receiving end can filter them out if it desires. The other way to do this would be to have an extra field in this thing. I guess one thing we need to worry about here is that's 1. That one's nothing. Clipboard's 4. 3. File content 5. That one's going to be 0, and that one's going to be 2. So I guess this one's going to be 6. And then we're going to need a little bit of this. And we will add it in here. Like so. And from .history import. Good gravy. That. Ooh. Did I miss one of those things? Let's see. We'll know soon enough. All I have to do is quit this and restart it. And we should get kicked right in the bottom if I did that wrong. Seems to be okay. File content is 5. History is 6. Yes, okay. We did correctly handle that, if you will. So this is something we can use to ship away a clipboard history entry from the global paste from history, which is something that our reception of this is already handling. In order for, well, we need to implement this first, and then I need to pull that code over to here to have another thing, because otherwise that one's going to get all cranky when it doesn't understand the message that it receives. That might actually be an interesting test. So right now we have a new item. Turn that off. A new history thing that's imported there and exported there. One new file that implements that, where we carefully remember to change the name of the class itself, its all of its instances, and its message ID. That ought to be good for that. We go to net handler. Well, that's unfortunate, but it'll do. The idea is that what? When would we transmit our history to the other end? Let's say if we are the one that's connecting to something, we ship our history over. And is that it? Or do we also do it when we accept a connection? If that copy of Sublime is running and I start it here, theoretically I want that end to give me its history. So it'll shoot it over here. Do I want the history for this one to go there? The tricky part of that is there's a limit to the history size. So depending on how that all times out, it's possible for these two machines to kibosh each other's history. So maybe only on connect, we pull it down. This is also something that we could implement as a user-facing command later. There's no reason why there couldn't be something in the command palette that said sync history and just have everything shoot every stuff all over everywhere or something. For the purposes of testing this, I guess, let's say if event, no, this isn't where we would do this. If we were going to do it in response to connecting to someone, we wouldn't do it here. We'd only do it here in response to accepting a connection from someone. So let's leave this one out for the time being. I'll put that one back to the way it was. What we actually want is the transport. Something down here is in response to this. That's accepting a connection. This is theoretically, we could actually do both of those parts in here. Can this be used to synchronize the console input? I don't see myself using clipboard across computers, but synchronizing console input history would be nice. Theoretically, that might be possible. Is one of the items for this the console input? Yes. In theory, you could gather the list of views and use that to pull the console input history over and shoot it. You can't really put anything into it though. I guess is probably the problem. You could gather it, or could you? I'm not sure that there's a way, even if you got the view handle for this input and used insert to insert text into it, I'm not sure that there's a way to submit it in a way that it would end up into the history. Theoretically, you could modify the session information or the workspace because that information is stored there, but I don't think that would work because Sublime doesn't, it only reads the workspace in session when it's opened. It doesn't reread it if it was modified on disk while it's already running. In fact, it actively clobbers over it by saving the session information every 30 seconds. There might be something to be done with that. Even if you had a quick panel that had the history from something else, that might be something to pull off. But oh, I guess we probably want this. Let's say, yeah. The handling in this bit of code here, I meant to do that, but that's okay. This is what happens when we receive a discovery message from another host. This gathers the whole message, and it's guaranteed to gather the whole message because UDP datagrams can't be partially read the same way that a socket can be buffered. There is an underlying buffer that is associated with UDP sockets, and when you receive, you can take as much out of that buffer as you want, but if you don't take all of the data out, the rest of it is discarded by the kernel, so you'll never be able to get the other part. And if the buffer is like 2K, but you get a 4K thing, then the kernel registers an overrun, and you can't possibly get the whole thing anyway. Generally speaking, buffer sizes for UDP are set sanely, and that's never really an issue. Although the thing that we work on at work, where we receive 4 billion messages a day on a normal trading day via UDP multicast due to over multi-gigabyte links directly connected to stock exchanges, we have the kernel on those systems set up to have ridiculously large UDP buffers because when messages are coming in that fast, that's the other thing about UDP. There's a set buffer size that the kernel has for holding UDP messages. As new messages come in, they're slotted into that buffer. Buffer runs out of space. The message over here, just gone. You don't even get to know that it's missing so that the new one can come in on the end. This is why many people refer to UDP as the unreliable datagram protocol, even though it really stands for user datagram protocol. But you know how I like to chitter chatter about networking type stuff. So we receive the message. If it's our host, we don't need to do anything. If it's a different version than us, we don't need to do anything. If we've already have a connection to that IP, either one we made or they connected to us, we also don't care. Otherwise, we call connect. We store the host name into the connection object right away because our reception of what we got here is actually an introduction message that has the fully qualified host name of the other end as it knows it. So we can store that right away. Otherwise, in the other network handler code here, you'll notice we have to have something that says if there's an introduction message, then we need to handle that one in a different way, which is the one down here, which is where we set the host name. And that's entirely because of this. We could actually see that happening somewhere else, I gather. Well, I guess this thing right here. After we connect, the first thing we do is transmit the same message that we were broadcasting, so the other person knows who we are. And as a part of this, we could also do this. Although the thought occurs, I don't necessarily remember what the method is on this thing. Get receives the storage. Okay, so for entry in G clipboard history dot get con dot send. I guess we need to import the thing, huh? So let's go up here. And oh yeah, nope. I clobbered it away. Clipboard message. Oops. History message. Then we can jump back down there. And this is safe to do because our connection objects have their own internal queue for messages that we want to transmit out. And the network thread down here has code for doing actual selections. So while we're running gather the list of all connections that are readable and all connections that are writable. And a connection considers itself writable if it has any messages in its outbound queue that it hasn't transmitted yet, or it is in the middle of transmitting a message out. Like if the message was so big it couldn't all be flushed to the socket at once. So as long as that's the case, this socket ends up in the writable select list, and then the select actually happens. And if it was writable, then its method gets called and it's allowed to try to send as much information out as it wants, which spools data out of the queue. So theoretically, that's all we need. And if I were to start this one up, this one over here should get some degree of angry. Possibly. It might just do nothing because it doesn't know what to do with the message. Unless this failed, which it did not seem to. I'm going to check here. Something to note here. I got a $25 Amazon gift card for filling out a survey about the software I used to create my YouTube videos. I assume that means not many people did it, but it was for Amazon.com, and you can't use that on Amazon.ca, and I'm Canadian, so I had to get something from the American Amazon. And the thing that I chose was this little bad boy right here, which looks like a USB thumbstick, but is actually an HDMI video capture card. I'm not sure if that'll actually focus. That thing looks really tiny. It cost 25 bucks, so basically it was free, except I had to pay shipping because they don't ship free to Canada. HDMI input there, USB 3 output here, does 1080p at 30 frames a second. It can actually receive 4K input. Actually works quite well for the price. I think I would, probably recommend it if you need something like that. In theory, I could use something like this to be able to shoot data from one of the other laptops into the stream. Or you could watch me play a Switch game. I don't know that that's necessarily interesting. I'm just looking here to see. Well, let's go back to this one actually, because if we were to receive something, we would be getting it as a message. And then we might do something like log message, let's say. Any message we receive, I'm not entirely sure that that'll work. Let's pretend that it does. So let's go ahead and say, we'll check that in. I'm going to amend this commit later. This is going to give us our clipboard history, so we can stage that and stage that one, right? Yeah, that seems okay. I mean, this is crunky, but we want this one to at least have some ability to do something with it. Sync history, we would call that one, commit that, and then push it to origin to make sure that that is, the correct thing. And if I came over to here, and I'm going to have to quit this thing, quit, and this is where things get tricky because this copy of Windows is a gigantic jerk bag about always opening things on this monitor when it doesn't have the active input. Now that I've set the active input on this monitor to be this computer, any windows that it opens will open over here. But when it's set to the Linux computer, it opens on this one. And I don't know how to fix that because it definitely knows what input it has. Why it would decide to do it when it's not visible, I don't know. Do I have a thing for this? I don't know that I do. Well, maybe I do. Sublinet. Git pull. All right, things have synced. Let's go ahead and fire that up. I guess technically now I can test to see what this one does with that. Is this one over here? That's the input. Wait just a moment. Should have theoretically logged some stuff, and then we'll know if it actually worked. Well, that can't be good. Fire that up again. That might be unrelated. We'll see. Did this one break in some sort of horrible fashion? Subnotify is ready for messages. Oh no. Oh wait. That's override audit. That doesn't matter. No module named. Oh, crap. Did I forget to check something in here? Because it seemed to have loaded just fine here. Yes, I did. I hate when that happens, you know? And we have to git fetch and git reset hard origin master. Okay. Let's try that one more time. I hate that whole forgetting to check in a new file. You quit, you restart. All right, are we happier now? Okay, I think we're happier now. Now the only error is related to unrelated packages, right? Yes. Cool. All right. So we come over to this one and, whoops, we don't do that because that's not what we want. We want that, pardon me. The one that initiated the connection. So it's only going to happen for this one. This one should be sending it to this one. This one does not seem to be receiving it. One would assume. Is that doing anything? Yes. All right. So we have that part at least getting stuff. I guess I should probably have done something like transmitting history, just so we could see it actually doing something. Unless there was an error in there, but there wasn't. So I think that we'll give that a try, so we can at least see what it's doing. Okay. And we will force with least that one again. Yeah, I know it diverged. 2 branches diverged in the woods, and I took the one on the left because it had the commit that I was interested in. Okay. So let us quit this and restart it. This is some exciting business. I should remember to swap this around. Oh. All right. Not gonna lie, was not expecting that. Wrong one. Well, I mean, That really looks like the thing. I guess we could check what this is going to. Manager broadcasts the message, and manager broadcasts the message just puts it on the connection. So I don't need to encode it first. So what the hell happened with this code? Connection line 90 in send. Does this not return what I think it returns? That's not going to work. I could have swore that that was a list. Self.storage is a list. Oh, but it's inserting display text, comma text when you push it. Right. Okay, so the first thing in there is what you see in the panel, and the second one is, just reconstructing the thing at this point, is what's actually in there. So in that case, this should be that, I guess, right? I'm not sure how that one slips past me. Okay, one more time. We're going to amend that. We're going to push it like so. And if I could remember to give the input focus to that thing, we could get fetch and, oops, get reset minus hard origin master. The joys of git reset. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come over to this thing. We're not going to do that. We're going to do that and open the console. Clear it all up, and then come over to this thing, quit, restart. Shall we see anything? Does not seem to have had an issue, but it also doesn't think it's connected to anything either. And if it did, I would have imagined that this would have noticed it. So that's weird. It's just not doing anything now because of that. It never said it was transmitting history. I mean, there wouldn't be any, right? So it's got that going for it. I guess that means we do need it on the accepting end too, because you can never know which way that's going to go, right? Okay, that definitely did something. Da, da, da. Okay, whoops, don't do that. That does something, and that does something. All right, so I guess we got to do it in two places. And I said we could do this in two places, right? We could do it here. This is when we receive a discovery message and we connect out. We make the connection to them. We queue up a message to introduce them to us, so we know they know who we are, and then we transmit clipboard histories away. If we handle an incoming message, we accept an incoming connection, that is telling us that this connection is actually done. The socket should be ready to go. I think we could potentially not do that because that's unfortunate. But a little bit of this. 2 incoming peer, and the other one was somewhere else, apparently. Uh-oh. What did I do? No, it's right here. Derp. 2 outgoing peer. Okay, let's try that and see what we get. And then I think we're almost at the end of this thing. I'll just stage that and do a little bit of that. And then we come over to here. Oops. Run yon command. Quit this. The nice thing is it gets a little faster. Well, now we got other cool issues. This one didn't restart, so it was sending stuff to that end, and I think that end was all cranky about it. But there is an issue here. It's saying in net handler at line 40, this is not doing what we want. Specifically, it says on this line, after it goes into the utils, text wrap, dedent, replacement index 0 out of range for positional args tuple. How is this different from the other log call? I guess we maybe want a little bit of this. Let's see what happens when I restart it. All right, well, that one's still unhappy. Did this one say it did anything? No. I guess we got to sync that change over too, just to see. Life is complicated when you join this sort of network-related thing. I like the ability to do this with Git, though. A little faster than file shares for this anyway, because these are on slightly different network segments in a way that makes that unhappy. So, whoops, that's unfortunate. Does anybody else have a problem with using their mouse and getting the mouse button a little too close to the keyboard or something else on the desk, and then you click down the mouse button and accidentally drag things when you didn't mean to? Because that happens more than I would care to admit. I'm going to restart this to make sure it starts with its fresh code, because I can't remember if I did that or not. That and definitely got all cranky on us, but I can quit it and I can restart it because that's not the keyboard connected to that computer. And quit. We see it say it closed. Thanks for displaying that pop-up there. Oop, there we go. And then we make sure we do this. And this. Okay, this one didn't complain. And that one didn't complain. Of course, connection error. It only works if there's something in the clipboard history, right? Otherwise, there's nothing to transmit. So that's something to keep in mind. Where's my mouse cursor? Quit that. Quit that, I say. That's the control key. Okay. Clipboard history, text equals. So it's angry at that log. I'm really confounded by that. But, you know, oh, look at me. I finished reading Harry Potter and now I'm using words like confounded. Oh, it's the end of an era. So this log on line 40 is still the sad maker, despite the fact that its one argument is a string that appears to not require any sort of fancy thing. I mean, why would that have any effect on this? I don't know. But you got multiple versions of these things running around. Life can be a little bit confusing. Okay, so we're going to quit that and redo that business and then restart this. And coming, okay, there we go. That one's happy now. That's just weird. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to copy that and that and that and that and that. Okay, I'm going to come over here and quit this and restart it. And I think that's going to have it doing something. Or not. Okay. Here's the clipboard history, which just happens to be from a JWT code in a window over here on this one, which you can't see, but now you can kind of see it because it's over there. Actually, this is the file I'm working on. This is the sort of thing we can do now. It's that big. If I came over here. This is the file that I'm looking at over in that little laptop window over there. So this is totally a useful package. So we're receiving the clipboard history. We could actually be inserting it into the clipboard history, which is something that this already does. Self.clipboard message is this one. And it does that and this. So technically, it really just needs to do this for that. So let's implement that. LF message.message ID is equal to clipboard history message.message ID. I thought I mentioned in the previous stream that the reason these classes work the way they do is because they're part of a project I worked on previously where the server end was C#. So I couldn't use Python pickling for things because I needed it to be cross-compatible. So I implemented a class the same as these message classes in C# and in Python to make sure that they would work. Self.clipboard history. I'm going to move that one. Oops. I'm going to move this one up. So to do that, dev clipboard history. And then we can just say this to push it. What we can't say is, and this could be actually tweaked up in the message that we're using when we're actually done with it, right? Kind of an important thing. In theory, that works. In theory. So I think what we want to do is, I'm going to quit this, go here, stage that in, amend the previous commit, do the ubiquitous push force with lease, come over to this one over here where we do, no, you don't do that. I pushed up, thank you. And then we have to quit here. And then restart here. Now here's what we're going to do. we're going to copy, copy, copy. So I put 3 things into the clipboard history over here. It transmitted stuff away, which is interesting. Is this connected to anybody? No. Well, I guess it's just counting things that actually put into the thing. Or my laptop in the other room is still active. Now we come over here and hit this. And woo! Boy, did that get angry. All right, let's actually fix this end, shall we? Oh, that's right. I took it out of there because I wasn't going to do anything with it. That's my bad. Start that up one more time. All right, so we look in the panel. Doesn't look like anything. But here's the stuff from over there. And interestingly enough, if I copy this to that end and then quit, and then start this one on this end, wait for it to connect. Now that one's in the history too because this one pushed it to that one and that one synchronized it back over here. That's kind of neat. So yeah, if we wanted an extra copy of that, that totally works. I mean, all things being equal, we probably want to do that. Just to make sure that this one has the same code as that one does, right? Otherwise, we'll be confused in a minute. I can actually quit this one and restart it. Let's see what happens in the other direction here. So here, that is now closed. I'm going to fire it up on this window. We should be able to see it connecting. And over here, there are a bunch of things in the clipboard history. And I totally don't have my override on clipboard history viewer over in this one. But yeah. Clipboard history message, preferred username, last name, and that comment. So it synchronized it back over here. Potentially, this needs a little bit more pajiggering. Just pondering the idea that this has a history and that has a history, and they each transmit their history across. Potentially end up with duplicates, unless paste from history is smarter about that, or we need to dedupe it somehow. But the only thing that we're actually doing with this right now, in fact, is just putting stuff into the history in one of these 2 ways. Probably want something like that. This could actually log it. One other thing that this could do, and maybe I'll do this after the stream, is that this message could have not just the text, but it could also have an integer or two integers in it that says how many history entries are going out and which one this is. So it could say this is 1 of 10, this is 2 of 10, this is 3 of 10. The other end could get that, and it would know that if the indexes are the same, then it could output a message that said clipboard history synced or something along those lines. One way to pull that off. Otherwise, you got to do something like try to guess when the other one is done. Or also something that we could do here is there are other message types we have that are actually implemented in here. This acknowledge message is one that you can use to send an ACK or a NACK to the other side, which you could use to acknowledge yes or no that something happened. So one thing we could do is transmit the history away, then transmit an ACK, and the other end that when it gets the ACK knows that that's the case. Or we could transmit actually a message to say exactly what we did, and then the other end could print that message to the console. The downside to that is if you wanted to turn off history, then you would need to know that this message is related to the history. So this is where you start getting into the whole idea of we have the ability to have a network connection, a reliable network connection via sockets between all of the different instances of this that are running inside the same local network, and we can at will put whatever data we want across. We have a structured way to construct a message of some kind and wrap it up in bytes and ship it off. We know that the network code has the ability to pull the bytes off into memory, and only when it gets exactly enough bytes for one message does it call the decode method to turn this back into a message instance and deliver it for something to happen. So we have all the power in the world to transmit messages around. The next thing to talk about is what sort of protocol is actually used for this. Right now, the protocol is very simplistic. When a connection is established, it sends an introduction message to introduce the other side to itself. Because if I'm connecting to you, I tell you who I am. The other side already knows because it tried to make the connection in response to receiving one of those messages as a broadcast. But apart from that, the only other thing we're doing is just transmitting a clipboard message to the other end, or now this. We could modify this so that every time you send a message, you acknowledge that you received it, and then the protocol would allow one side to know that it transmitted a clipboard message and the other side received it and used it. Or maybe the other side received it and said, I don't want it, in which case you don't have to send anymore. There's all sorts of cool stuff that we could have happening in that particular case. But that is something that will happen perhaps in the next stream. So I think it's about time to call her quits. Getting a weird sound in the headset there. But I think we did some good work here. We managed to get this stuff more or less working. There's only a couple of things that are left to do here, and you can't see this because I have swapped the screen. But the other items in here are changing all of the logging to be nicer, and I have some ideas for that. You could have an event name at the start and then a host name, or it could say host name connected, host name disconnected. Maybe instead of using the fully qualified host name, we just choose the host name, pad it out to 32 bytes. Once we have a way to do that, the other thing is maybe use syntax highlighting. You got to have I like to have a format locked down before I implement syntax highlighting. One of the other things is replace the message classes, something to be done, and detecting configuration changes. But by and large, this is actually doing everything I originally intended it to do. So that is pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So we're going to call the stream here. So thanks so much for watching. If you have been, thanks for the questions in the console there. Those are always fun and a nice diversion when things are going wrong. Remember, you can always subscribe to know when live streams happen. They should happen every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Follow me on Twitter at OdatNurd. I usually tweet out there if I am going live or not. Most of the time it's a yes, occasionally it's no when dental problems or other weird issues get in the way. And I have another channel that is linked in the description below that you can subscribe to for weekly Sublime Text videos. We're currently in the midst of some plugin 101 stuff doing event listener type things. And the next video that's coming up is going to have at least an example of a custom key binding context, maybe also some autocomplete stuff. I haven't decided yet where the edit falls on that, if they should be 2 videos or 1. We'll see what happens. But until those videos or the next live stream, thanks for watching, and this has been OdatNurd asking you to please have a sublime day. And then notice that I reached down here so I can push this button.